let's talk about connective tissue. So remember with epithelial tissue that we had a number of different characteristics that were common to pretty much all epithelial tissues? It's a little tougher with connective tissues. There's not that much in common between them. Remember that the key word when it comes to connective tissue is support. And there's many different types of support that can be given to the body. There's physical support, there's structural support, there's the support of bringing stuff to and fro, and all of these things require very different characteristics of the tissue. Nonetheless, they all have in common they are supportive. Additionally, connective tissues have in common that they do have a common embryonic origin. There's a embryonic tissue called mesenchyme, which gives rise to 4 different types of stem cells and stem cell tissues shown here. And you can see then, this is kind of a cool figure that gives the 4 different basic types of connective tissue. There's connective tissue proper, there's cartilage, there's bone tissue, there's blood tissue. And underneath of here, then we see different types. There's lots of different details under there, but maybe it might help you to see that there are 4 basic types of connective tissue, and they all arise from the same origin. One of the things that really makes connective tissue special is that there is a lot of non-living extracellular matrix. That word matrix means the stuff in between the cells. So when we look at that matrix, there's 2 things all connective tissues have. They have structural elements for support. This includes ground substance and fibers. And this is all part of that matrix, the in between the cells stuff. So the structural elements for support, ground substance, and then fibers. And then they also have cells, and this comprises the living part of connective tissue. So again, connective tissue is made of 2 basic things, cells and matrix. And when we look at the matrix, it's divided up into 2 parts, ground substance and fibers. So the type of connective tissue is going to be determined by the proportion of structural elements, that matrix, and the living cells. So let's take a look at the structural elements, that matrix. There's the ground substance. There's an unstructured material which fills the space between the cells. There's fluid here. It acts as a molecular sieve between capillaries and cells. Let me explain what this means. Capillaries bring blood to a region and also bring blood to a region, which means they bring oxygen and nutrients into a region. And then they also remove waste products and carbon dioxide from the region as well. And the deal with connective tissue is that oftentimes there is so much unstructured material that it's hard for the living cells to have access to all of the stuff that blood brings. So the ground substance, one of the main roles of ground substance is to carry that stuff from the blood to the cells and back. So examples of ground substance, and some of which you may have heard of, is interstitial fluid, cell adhesion proteins, proteoglycans. There are these structures called GAGs, which includes some things you may have heard of before, chondroitin, keratin sulfates, hyaluronic acid. If you've ever heard of a jogger taking glucosamine chondroitin, the idea is here that they're trying to increase the levels of ground substance inside of the movable joints of the body, and this allows them, at least it is theorized, that this would increase the ground substance, would increase the molecular sieve, the ability to feed those the nutrients into those tissues properly. And this is kind of a cool TEM, transmission electron micrograph on the side, on the left here, and a sketch of it on the right-hand side, showing how all these things sometimes fit together into these kind of weird-looking structures where you can actually bring oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients clinging to these structures, and they can actually be transported throughout connective tissues. Let's turn to the next structural element, keep in mind at this point we are talking about structural elements. The first structural element is the ground substance, which we just discussed. The second structural element, which is much more prominent, I think, much more visible, are the fibers. So the most prominent of fibers in connective tissue is going to be collagen. Collagen is cross-linked, tough, and abundant. If we're looking at a sketch such as this, these big thick cables running through here would be the collagen fibers. Whenever you have collagen as part of a tissue, it is going to give strength to that tissue. So in your mind, collagen should equal strength. Additionally, we have elastic fibers. These are long and thin, and just like the name suggests, they stretch and recoil easily. They are elastic. So in this picture, these brown structures in here are the elastic fibers. And then we have reticular fiber. Reticular fibers are fine collagen fibers. They are continuous with collagen fibers. They form networks around blood vessels and around soft organ tissues. So since they are collagen fibers, remember collagen means strength, so they're just thinner versions of a very strong cable, but since they are thinner, they're still strong, but they give a little bit more. They have a little more give, so they can wrap around things better. So what we're looking at here is just sort of a hypothetical connective tissue. It sort of looks like one of the tissues we're going to be dealing with, which is a real or connective tissue. One of the things you'll notice in here are all of the fibers that we just talked about. And the other thing you might notice is all of the cells inside of here. This doesn't look exactly like many connective tissues, but it just kind of gives you an idea of the types of material that you could find in a hypothetical connective tissue. So here's the cells in the connective tissues. We're going to have fat cells, generally speaking, lipocytes. We will also have white blood cells of a variety of types of white blood cells, which includes plasma cells, mast cells, macrophages, any variety of white blood cells. And all of these are meant to monitor the tissue for any type of pathogens, bacteria, viruses, parasitic worms, and then be able to take care of the problem or to alert the immune system of a problem. And also, the cells in connective tissue, of course, will be the characteristic cell for that tissue. For example, in bones, you have cells called osteocytes. So generally speaking, you will have white blood cells, you'll have fat cells, and you will also have osteocytes.